Tonight we're going to finish chapter 9 in our portrait of samsara. We'll continue our exploration of the wheel of life. I have one for you here. Let's see. Maybe not. Well, it's the same wheel as last week. Let's see, unmute myself. Sorry, I'm having a window issue here. Okay. So yes, we're going to continue our exploration. We'll be going to the inner ring, looking at the 6 realms, and reviewing the 3 roots of suffering, sometimes called the 3 poisons, at the very center of the circle. So there's 3 ways to take the 6 realms. First, in the traditional Buddhist teachings, you're physically born into a realm. We were born into the human one, and we're also aware of the animal realm. But according to this view, there are 4 other worlds that we can't see the inhabitants of. These are the realms of the hell beings, hungry ghosts, jealous gods, and gods. Through the 12 causal links, the 12 nidas that John described last week, we create the realm we're born and reborn into. The second way to view the realms are as self-defeating personality types, as it were. These are habitual states of mind that can last a lifetime or at least change very slowly. They describe particular styles of imprisonment within samsara. They're like habitual games or strategies with which we occupy our minds to keep from awakening. The third way to take the realms is as a momentary flash or experience happening throughout the day. Someone compliments you and you're in bliss in the God realm. Someone cuts you off in traffic or you turn on the news and your anger and helplessness plunges you into the hell realm. Each of these realms manifests a particular way in which ego attempts to make itself solid. A particular style of grasping and obsessing that becomes an identity in an ill-guided attempt to create permanence and security. This is the cyclic nature of samsara, the ongoing lost wandering around and around, continual rebirth, whether of a physical body, personality, or moment, but a rebirth into these different realms until enlightenment occurs. In the hell realm, there are 2 hells, one of intense heat and one of intense cold. Both are formed and fueled by extreme aggression. In the hot hell, aggression is projected outward. You're so angry, you want to destroy everything, yet everything seems beyond your control. You're suffering intensely, but feel completely powerless to make it stop. Every attempt to escape makes the situation worse. The more struggle, the worse it gets. Life feels claustrophobic, unbearable. In the hell of intense cold, aggression is turned inward. You're no good, worthless. It's the hell of self-hatred. There's paralysis, depression, and deep, deep despair. In your frozen world, you're cut off from all others. As Francisca Friedmantle, a student of Trungpa Rinpoche, writes in what I think is a wonderful book, Luminous Emptiness, she says, there's a distorted logic associated with aggression, by which it always justifies itself and puts the blame on others. We become so convinced that our suffering depends on the external situation that we feel we cannot possibly change our own attitude. Others have done wrong, therefore we must not give in to them and give up our anger. Or others have hurt us so badly that we can never stop hating them and be happy again. What has been done cannot be undone. We owe it to ourselves never to forgive or forget. We radiate the flames of our burning hatred, and they shoot back at us from earth and sky. We emanate the waves of our icy hatred and turn the whole world into a freezer. Suffering is so intense in either hell that you have no space to move beyond your immediate existence, no possibility of awakening. You're completely consumed and fending off your pain, which is unceasing. The traditional image of an inhabitant of the hungry ghost realm, is a creature with a small, tiny mouth, a long, thin neck, and a big, starvation, swollen belly. They have long fingers that are constantly, frantically grasping and attempting to swallow whatever they can get their hands on. But so little of what they need gets through. It just can't get through their thin necks to fill their bellies. The psychological state is one of extreme frustration and felt deprivation. The hungry ghost is desperately trying to find ways to satisfy its unceasing hunger, painfully demanding of others to give to them, but without being able to take anything in or benefit from what it does get. We might get what we want, but the wanting remains. An everyday example might be you've eaten every sweet, fat-laden carbohydrate in the house and are feeling physically and maybe even painfully stuffed, but you still long to have the room to eat even more. The satisfaction you expected from consumption eludes you and fuels even more grasping. You're still searching in the external world to fill yourself up. There's another kind of being or ghost in this realm, which could be described more as a demon or an evil spirit. These are beings who are forced to continually review their previous suffering and death. They're filled with terror, and they're only interested in downloading that pain to other people. They think of nothing but how they can hurt or harm others. Even when successfully bringing sickness, insanity, and death to other beings, this does them no good. Their harm to others does not relieve them of any pain. They continue to be tortured while bringing only destruction and misery to anyone around them. Overall, in this realm, Trungpa Rinpoche says, quote, "It's the frustration of the wanting itself that causes excruciating pain. Wanting becomes a piercing, frustrated pain in a backdrop of felt deprivation, an economy of scarcity, psychological poverty. Hunger fills up the space of any possible letting go." The underlying emotional quality of the animal realm is self-absorbed ignorance. There's a narrowing of focus to just what one needs for immediate survival. Sleep, food, sex, safety. This animal state of mind is always attempting to make a safe, familiar cocoon for itself. Anything outside of the familiar routine of living is viewed with suspicion. Trungpa Rinpoche describes this as a refusal to venture onto new ground, the tendency to cling to the familiar and to fight your way from one familiar situation to another, the daily grind, if you were. A classic example of an inhabitant in this realm would be the ugly American traveling abroad, and they're seeking to replicate everything they can about their home ground, food, lodging, all the while disapproving and rejecting the new experience travel to a foreign country could bring. The main suffering in this realm comes from the fight for survival, trying not to become someone else's dinner. Animals face exploitation, being used for others' purposes, perhaps the torture of modern-day agricultural practices, and being devoured by others. When confronted by a force greater than oneself, the tendency is to, quote, "play dead" or camouflage yourself as though you're not there. Behavior is driven by the instinctual, the habitual, or what is conventional. One could be steady, reliable, an efficient member of society, but without ever thinking for oneself or any self-reflection. There's a lack of interest in exploring, a lack of openness and vision. One could live their entire life in a state of being half asleep, not challenging oneself in any way. So the mindset of beings in the jealous God realm are intensely competitive. Winning or losing defines their world. They must have a battle to engage in to feel alive. The battle itself is essential, rather than the cause they fight for. All others are seen as soldiers in their army, potential rivals, enemies, or just not worthy of attention. Trusting nothing that doesn't come from themselves, nothing they don't know already. They aren't able to take in new experience, so they can't really learn from their own mistakes or learn from anyone else. Already powerful in some arena, they're obsessed with achieving even more, achieving whatever their version of heaven is. They might be dynamic, charismatic, energetic, and very attractive to others, particularly to those reassured by their authoritarian leadership in times when personal safety is of foremost concern. Or or their competitiveness with the gods may make them seem like revolutionaries if they're fighting to bring down the status quo. For the inhabitants of the jealous god realm, there is a craving or an impulse to act without constraint. Others' good fortune is resented. It's felt as if it should really be coming to them. They're easily insulted and offended since they're always interpreting others' actions to have the same aggressive motivation theirs do. Others' acts of compassion are seen as acts of deception or being submissive. The jealous god's suffering comes from their anxiety, their insecurity, with a constant struggle to maintain their territory. It comes from the unbearable thought of losing, of not being the best or master of every situation. Trungpa Rinpoche describes how a jealous God mentality develops through the disillusion and discontent with the God realm. He says, when the positive karma that caused rebirth as a God is exhausted, the only way to go is down. The God realm is a place of pleasure, perfection. It contains, though, within itself the seeds of this reaction. It gives birth to an element of rebelliousness, a desire to experience something more crude and down to earth. Once we've developed this attitude of discontent, it's no longer possible to relax and enjoy the blissful existence of the gods. There remains an underlying envy of those who can still enjoy it, a feeling of being cheated, a fear of losing what was ours by right. And then we begin to feel shut out and excluded, and suspicion grows rampant. Nobody can be trusted. We imagine that everyone's spying on us and gossiping about us. Soon every attempt to communicate appears as a threat, and conspiracies are seen in all directions. This is paranoia, the extreme of the jealous God state of mind. In the God realm, the underlying psychological state is of complete blissful self-absorption. In the lower levels of the God realm, there's indulgence in all sorts of pleasures, enjoying riches of beauty, health, education, wealth. In the higher realms of the gods, one indulges in the joy of complete meditative intoxication. However, both kinds of indulgence are not simply for enjoyment, but in the service of defining oneself, maintaining ego. Trungpa Rinpoche has said, quote, life is seen as a search for happiness and fulfillment. When that search becomes the whole purpose of life, it can easily develop into an obsessive concern with youth and beauty, healthy living, self-improvement, emotional growth, and so on. There's always a certain amount of self-consciousness and self-congratulation in these endeavors. In this realm, meditation that is seen as something separate from oneself gives rise to a subtle tension of trying to maintain one's experience of absorption, another kind of grasping. The achievement in the higher levels of the God realm of highly focused, concentrated attention blocks the more expansive awareness of things as they are. and pride of accomplishment and delusion about the permanence of the pleasures in the God realm give rise to complacency. Unable to secretly contemplate a world without us in it, we feel a godlike invulnerability. The collapse of our idyllic situation is doubly painful due to our previous inability to even conceive of it ending. We haven't truly been aware of the impermanence of our situation, especially of our lives, the certainty of our deaths. While filled with pleasurable experience, being born into the God realm does not save us from the pain of samsara and rebirth into the suffering of one of the lower realms. And filled with bliss, we're not motivated or open to the Dharma, which could point our way out. The psychological underpinnings of the human realm is dissatisfaction. There is intelligent curiosity and passion for the world around us. Because of this interest in the world, cause and effect could be seen and worked with. However, human beings are constantly trying to use what they understand about the world to maximize pleasure and avoid pain. This leads to dissatisfaction when one's passion fails to be realized. This striving after pleasure, the need to possess our objects of desire, it can become obsessive and turn to grasping, greed, lust. The human state of mind is filled with endless struggles to get what is wanted and attempts to get rid of what is not. However, the restless, curious passion toward the world opens up the possibility of a glimpse of the uselessness of the ongoing struggle to make things the way we want them to be. This curious intelligence, when not struggling against itself, might be able to hear the Dharma and thus start awakening from the dreams of ignorance and the delusions of confused mind. This just isn't true for any of the other realms. Existence in the human realm provides enough suffering to motivate following the Dharma, as well as the possible space to do so. Beginning to see through the games of samsara, the 6 realms, beginning to sense that endless pursuit of desires is somehow empty or useless, a false occupation of ego, a slight doubt might arise. A slight pause in the chase could occur. This slight doubting of the solidity of the 6 realms, a pause where if one were fortunate enough to hear the Dharma, it might start to be absorbed. That beginning brief glimpse of how things actually are, that glimpse, it's a threat to ego's existence. So ego is propelled into protecting itself. As John described last week, the center of the wheel of life symbolizes the ways the ego maintains or defends. Those are the ways, the roots of all suffering in the 6 realms of samsara. Ego's first defense is to slam the door on the whole thing. The first reaction to the doubt is deliberate ignoring. This is symbolized by a pig in the center of the wheel. Trungpa Rinpoche describes the first hearing of Dharma to be a shock. Quote, impossible to be so precise and accurate. So you react like a pig, relating purely like an animal, with non-discriminating perception, rooting around looking for comfort and security. When deliberate ignoring doesn't work, you try to possess the whole thing, to draw it to you. This confused passion is represented by the rooster in the middle of the circle. There's an overcompensating display, trying to draw others in with its colorful feathers, at the same time, an underlying insecurity. Trungpa Rinpoche says it consumes and attracts attention at the same time. Attempting to take in and consume for itself all the beauty of the world. When attraction doesn't work, the ego attempts to master the other by overpowering or forcing them. This aggression is symbolized by the snake, which paralyzes with poison or by wrapping itself around the desired other. Either it successfully subjugates or destroys them. As Francesca Fremantle describes it, these three roots of suffering, otherwise known as three poisons, quote, pervade and influence the mechanism of samsara existence from the beginning to the end. They keep the whole process of dualistic experience going. They're the three basic reactions that I can have when it perceives something outside itself as other. We can be attracted to the other, wish to possess it, control it, or take it over and make it part of ourselves. This is passion. We can reject it, push it away, or try to destroy it. This is aggression. Or we could ignore it and pretend it does not exist. This is ignorance or delusion. The six realms arise when we've accumulated enough of these poisons that they color our existence and take over, and now we're in one of the realms. We're completely involved in our emotions and can only view ourselves and the world from that perspective. All realms involve grasping and not being able to let go into spaciousness. So these descriptions have mostly been on the extreme of the realm, but some everyday examples might be helpful. For example, for instance, these are some states you might encounter going to sleep at night. First, the hell realm version. You are tossing and turning. You can't get comfortable more than 15 seconds. You can't sleep, you're miserable, you can't do anything to remedy the state. You're just lying awake, torturing yourself, imagining how much your next day is going to suck if you can't get any rest. How inadequate you'll perform your job. The more you try to go to sleep, the more awake you are. In the hungry God realm, you're exhausted, you're finally getting the opportunity to lie down. You have quiet, you have a comfortable bed, warm blankets, no demands finally on you. You really, really want to go to sleep, but your mind is racing and you can't make use of any of your opportunities. In the animal realm, there is a sense of being driven to watch yet another episode of that TV show you've been streaming just because your Netflix settings automatically start the next episode and the next one and the next one. In the human realm, there's using intelligence to come up with different sleep remedies, craving external solutions to going to sleep, and trying them, but without getting sleepy and feeling dissatisfied with all of them. In the jealous God realm, you're envious of all the other people you imagine who can easily fall asleep. And you might even be envious of your own younger self who could do that and sleep solidly through the night. And in the God realm, you listen to a guided meditation and float gently and delightfully into sleep on a pink cloud. So John's going to give us some additional teachings on the sixth realm and finish off the chapter for us, and we'll have some time for discussion after that. During our discussion, feel free to bring up whatever you would like as usual, but I would love to hear any examples that have occurred to you, anything that helps us flesh out and become more aware of the psychological mindsets of the realms. In that same light, I have a game or an exercise I'm calling What's My Realm that we could get into it if we have time. Thanks. John, you're muted.
Yeah. Thank you, Laura. That's terrific.
Thank you.
I think we'll all be studying the realms for a long time. They are the portraits of our neurosis. And it serves us very well to become conscious of our own particular styles of neurotic behavior and thought. When we are unaware, then we are doomed to simply act it out, play it out, dream it out. It's like we're dreaming and we are sleepwalking through the dream of the realm that we inhabit, or realms. But when we begin to become aware of our own particular styles of distortion and neurosis, of aggression and passion and ignorance, then we can begin to see the alternative. And as Rinpoche said earlier on in this chapter, when you really understand ignorance, that in itself can be enlightenment. Now, what's usually happening is that we're sort of dreaming. You know, when you're dreaming at night, you don't even know you're dreaming. You're lost in the dream. And we do this all the time during the day as well. When we meditate, we begin to come conscious, and you can begin to see your thoughts as they arise, if you're not lost and going off and dream again. And this is really one of the main functions of meditation. These thoughts, the expressions of the realms, the mental events, the distortions, the way we see reality through a veil of distortion and interpretation, basically has one function, and that is to keep the fiction of I alive. All of these realms are stratagems, are games that we play that keep I functioning. I is basically a story. And we have the story of the jealous God, we have the story of the hungry ghost, we have the story of the animal, and all these stories are we're continually telling ourselves these stories, and they have the function of keeping this story about I going. As soon as we come back into awareness, the story evaporates. If we come fully into awareness of this present moment, we stop telling that story of I and its story, its realm, as it were, dissolve. But we tend to spend a lot of time dreaming. At night, certainly, but also during the day, as we dream about our lives and the lives of others. And the main function of these, whatever the emotion is to keep I, the myth, the fiction, or as Trungpa Rinpoche once said, the lie of I going. So it helps very much to begin to become aware of one's own particular style or styles. And in fact, what it's said is in the teachings, you see these stories that we tell ourselves, whatever realm they may characterize, are coming from our unconscious, as it were, to use the Freudian term. The Buddhist term is they're coming from the alaya. The alaya is the storehouse. Same idea. We have experiences in the past, and while we're not thinking about them right now, they're stored in the unconscious as memories, as potentials. And events in the present can trigger them into consciousness, or they can just spin out themselves as they do at night and they do a day. Suddenly you're walking down the street and you're having a memory of a fight with so-and-so that happened years ago. This is the action of karma. This is what is meant by the karmic chain, is that we see the world through a veil of story that is stored in our unconscious, our memory, our storehouse. The way to free oneself from this is to bring those memories, those stories, conscious, to see them without any agenda, including the agenda of freeing oneself from them. And this is described again and again in the teachings, that one sits in meditation, if you're going to do it in sitting meditation, and these thoughts, these memories come up and you simply see them. You don't do anything with them. No agenda. And in doing so, slowly or quickly, depending on you, you burn them up by bringing them conscious, by realizing as you see them, sooner or later, that they're just stories, fictions, creations. So it helps very much to become aware of the style of one's realm or realms. The three poisons, which are the three fundamental mechanisms of ego, aggression, passion, and ignorance. Why are they so fundamental? Because when one believes in a self, I, then everything else that one relates to as I is either for me, against me, or indifferent. If it's for me, I want to draw it close. I want it to become part of my life, to bolster me, to bolster my existence and my well-being. That's passion. You draw the other toward you. If it's antipathetic, if it's aggressive or dangerous to the well-being of I, then you want to push it away. That's aggression. And if it has no function for or against, then you are indifferent to it. That indifference is, the word for that in Sanskrit is moha, and it's often translated as ignorance, but that's a bad translation. Ignorance should be reserved for a different concept. It's really indifference, stupidity, the pig. Now, I just want to emphasize something else. You'll come across, oftentimes when the six realms are being discussed, you'll come across a mention of the three worlds, or the three dhatus, to use the Sanskrit for it, or the three realms. Dhatu is translated variously: world, realm, sphere. What this is referring to is this, that samsara is not just the six realms. Laura really went into this a bit. I just want to make it really crystal clear, because you'll see the references as you read along to the three worlds, let's say, or the three spheres, or the three dhatus, three realms. And what they're referring to is this. The six realms are part of the six realms. The word for realm actually is Loka. So it's the six lokas are part of the realm, which is a dhatu, of desire. It's called the Kama dhatu. Maybe you've heard about the Kama Sutra, the Indian text on sex and love. Kama means desire. And the six realms are part of the sphere of desire. Above them, in the structure of samsara, are the two realms that are purely mental states. Again, Laura went into this, but I'm going to emphasize it. The first is called the realm of pure form. The rupa. Rupa means form. It also means statue. If you have an image of the Buddha, it's a rupa. The rupa dhatu. And above that is the formless realm, the arupa dhatu. Is a negative. These are purely mental states. They are concentration states. Abstractions. You can only enter these realms through intense meditation practice, concentration practice. You're focusing your mind one-pointedly on an object. Basically, these are trance states. And these are the higher and highest God realms. They are very, very pleasurable. And they take a tremendous amount of work to achieve. And when one does achieve them, one is basically gone from this world. You are in a purely mental world. And there are lots of stories. See, these are regarded as dangerous, these realms. The form and formless realm. Because it takes long practice, lots of work to achieve them. And they have to do with focusing your mind one-pointedly on subtler and subtler objects and achieving tremendous states of concentration without interruption for long periods of time. So there are lots of stories about yogis going off and mistakenly getting stuck in these dhatus, the formless, the rupa dhatu and the arupa dhatu, the form and formless realm. And great teachers might come and find this person. And you can actually go into a purely mental space for such long periods of time that the body withers completely away. And then the teacher comes along and has to wake the person up and say, look, you've been stuck. You need to get on with your practice, or your path. This is very dangerous. The reason it's dangerous is the same reason it's dangerous for any of the God realms. They take a long time to achieve. One stays there a long time. They're very pleasurable. And when one falls, as one does, inevitably, because these are created things, and things that are created always dissolve. When one falls, the fall is really painful and full of unhappiness, and one can be plunged all the way into a hell realm. And it was a waste of time. It was a cul-de-sac. It was you weren't achieving any real awakening. It was just a temporary mental place. But there are analogies for these, or correlates for these in our daily life. We achieve some kind of pleasurable state. We want to hold on to it, but we can't. Now they say of the gods, at any stage, the gods of the Kama dhatu, that's the gods that, the God state that is the lowest of the God states. These are people who are focused on pleasure. They say of these beings that they're very beautiful, they're very powerful. They're utterly oblivious to the suffering of the other realms. It's kind of like the Marie Antoinette mentality, let them eat cake, just can't really resonate, can't sympathize. The gods can't. But they're completely absorbed in pleasure. Whatever they see is beautiful. Whatever they smell is perfume. Whatever they eat is ambrosia. They make love with a glance. These are the gods of the Kamadhatu. But inevitably, a person, a god, will start to fall. It takes a long time, eons. But they'll begin to age. And when they do, they begin to smell bad. This is what they say in the text. And the other gods, sensing that this person is about to fall, avoid them. They don't want to have anything to do with them. Don't even want to know they exist. And haven't we seen this in our lives? I remember years ago, I went up to, I was in the travel business and we were doing some particular kind of project, and I had a lot of work to do in Aspen. And I was talking to people up there. This was back in the 70s. And I met so many people who were either wealthy or want to be wealthy, who were either young and beautiful or want to be young and beautiful. The cult of youth in Aspen was so pronounced among these people who were permanent residents. And of course, it felt like, the corruption of the God realm. So now we've talked about the three dhatus, so that when you run across this idea, the three realms, the three worlds, the three dhatus, however it's translated, expressed, you'll know what's being talked about. Dugel Khyentse Rinpoche was a great teacher. He died in about 1993, I think, and a close friend of Trungpa Rinpoche's, probably at the time of his death, the most revered of all the Tibetan teachers. And there's stories of him finding yogis who had gotten stuck in the God realms, the formless God realms, form or formless, and he kicks them out. He wakes them up, says, you're stuck, get on with it. You got to come back and do your meditation practice. And lots of other teachers have done this too. There's stories. Just a couple of random notes. As Laura observed, only in the human realm can you tread the path. And this is true both as a physical body and as a mental state. Only human beings have the requisite mix of intelligence and suffering. You see, gods have so little suffering, they have no motivation to tread the path. They don't want to achieve enlightenment, or they think it's a good idea, but we'll just there are all these stories about dumb gods up there in heaven, and they're looking down at the Buddha on earth. They're saying, gee, I don't really understand what he's doing, but I'll rain some flowers down on him. That's the gods. They're sort of like dumb jocks, sweet, very sweet. But human beings have the right mix of suffering and intelligence. Now, if you're a hell being, you're not going to tread the path. You're too busy just trying to survive. Same for any of the lower realms, animal realm, hungry ghost. It's very bad to be born in the lower realms. A lot of suffering, no path. Jealous gods, they could care less about the path. Did anybody have any ideas about jealous gods when you were listening to that terrific description that Laura gave? I could just see a particular jealous god in my mind. And they have no interest in self-examination. But more than that, when you get to the Vajrayana, you'll find there's a description of the world and of one's body and being that is very different and very magical. It has to do with, you're familiar with chakras, channels, winds that move through the body, and bindus, they're called essences. People think, well, this is sort of primitive spiritual physiology, but it's just another way of describing the experience that one might have of one's being, just as modern science is the same. The words are not the reality. They're just labels. And whether we're talking about veins and arteries or channels and winds, just different words to describe the experience of what's inside us. Only human beings have the necessary equipment inside to do the meditations and tread the path. The other beings simply don't have it. They don't have all the channels and chakras and winds. So both from a psychological point of view and from a physiological point of view, the best realm is to be born a human being, by far. Finally, I want to talk about, this is the wheel of life. It's about death and birth. Death and birth are happening all the time. Every birth, like the birth of this word, is a death. This word comes out, it's born, and it's already dying. Same for this gesture, same for anything. I turn my head, there's the lamp, I turn my head this way, there's the hall. These things, and now I turn away, and that experience is dying as it is born. Our physical deaths and births are just grosser examples of the same thing. This is not a beginning and an end of anything. It's a continuum of change. And that's what these realms are. We are constantly moving in and out of these realms. It's a constant continuum of change. And so we can speak of, in the course of my day, somebody compliments me and I'm in the God realm. Somebody insults me and I'm in the hell realm, full of anger and aggression. I'm moving through the realms, being born and dying. And in my life, this body that's however old you happen to be, you were born X number of years ago, you will die Y number of years hence. But those births and deaths are just the grosser example of the same thing that's happening every second. And so we're constantly moving through the realms in the course of a day, an hour, a lifetime, many lifetimes. They say in the Buddhist teachings that each one of us has been born and has died countless numbers of times. So much so that everyone you know, I'll give this to you, it's a constant repeated refrain in Buddhism and Tantric Buddhism especially, that everyone you know has at one time or another been your mother. It's a good one, isn't it? Everyone has been your mother. You've all been my mother. And I yours at some time or another. Another one is that all of us, through the constant births and deaths that we encounter, which go on for millennia, kalpas, yugas, whatever that means, because time doesn't really exist. It's just a fiction, a figment of one's imagination. But through that time, we're moving through the realms over and over again. So I think it really behooves us and will benefit us if we can begin to identify the realms in our own lives, our own psychology, maybe in the psychology and lives of people around us. And we could have about a 15, 20-minute discussion. And thank you, Laura. That was really terrific. Worth listening to again in the recording.
I have a question for Laura. This is Meg.
Hi, Meg.
Hi.
Hi.
So let's see, how do I want to put this? You're talking about like when you recognize some kind of a pattern, a psychological pattern, and basically the best thing we can do is become aware of it. And I know this is an exaggeration, but that it should just disappear. Well, that's not my experience. And I see psychological patterns come up and I'm really aware of them. I know where they come from and all of that, and they're still there and they don't disappear. And I
It,
just wonder if you could address that.
sure. They disappear gradually, more or less, depending on you and the particular pattern and your psychology, but it takes time. And in fact, this is described in the teachings. If there's a wonderful book that you could read about this, Thich Nhat Hanh, a book called Understanding Our Mind. And he's talking about just this. And what he's saying is that when you begin to become aware of these patterns, they wear out in grades. And you start with the highest grade. So a typical Buddhist, numerology kind of thing, supposedly the first wearing out is that you experience this pattern, this habit of mind, and it's strong, strong, strong. Then you begin to bring it to awareness and it begins to weaken a bit and it becomes strong, strong, medium. And then it becomes strong, strong, weak with further awareness. And then it becomes strong, medium, strong, strong, medium. Get it? These things wear out through repeated bringing them to awareness, sometimes instantly. There are some things that you see and you go, oh my gosh, what have I been doing? Get rid of that, But a lot of these, especially the ones that are deeply rooted in our unconscious, take a lot of time and a constant bringing to awareness through the act of meditation without trying to get rid of them. If you try to get rid of them, then you turn them into an enemy and they will stick around. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I would emphasize particularly that last thing that you said, John, that there's a subtle way that I can see a pattern and then get mad about it, frustrated, and now I'm in the battle. And that actually, now I'm creating an obstacle. So that's different than going, there I'm doing that again. Well, that's interesting. It's not fueling it in the same way. It's not taking it quite so seriously. It's not buying into the story quite so much.
If you make a thing an enemy, then there's the promise that you're going to get rid of your enemy. And won't that be great? So you got to keep the enemy around to keep the promise alive. There's this story about Milarepa, the 12th century, 11th or 12th century Tibetan yogi, famous saint. And he's sitting in his cave meditating. And this demoness, Saringma, her name is, appears and she bites his toe. And he's in pain and he asks her to stop and she won't. And then he says, look, I'm a holy yogi. You're accruing a lot of bad karma by biting my toe. And she just laughs and says, oh, you're just trying to get rid of me. And she won't let go. And she keeps torturing him until he accepts her. And at the moment that he accepts her, she becomes the goddess Saringma. And after that, helps him with his practice. Now, what this is saying is that when we turn a thing into an enemy, we keep it alive as an enemy because it has this promise of something better until we actually accept it as it is. And it's the same thing with all the things in our mind, bringing them to complete awareness. Thich Nhat Hanh describes it beautifully in his book. In the 7th century in India, there was a great teacher, his name was Vasubandhu, and he wrote treatises about karma and about mind, which were very important and very famous and important in the development of Buddhism. And he called them things like the treatise on mind in 30 verses, or the treatise on karma in 20 stanzas, 20 verses. So Thich Nhat Hanh wrote his book, Understanding Our Mind, in verses. And then Vasubandhu, you see, did a commentary on his own writing. So Thich Nhat Hanh did that too. He was paying deference to Vasubandhu. he copied the format. And he wrote this treatise really on the subject that Vasubandhu had talked about in the 7th century, 600s. And it's a lovely book. It's very, very Thich Nhat Hanh, which is very Mahayana. There's a sweetness to it that Trungpa Rinpoche always pointed out to us. The Mahayanists have a kind of sweetness to the way they present the Dharma, and the Vajrayanists are more, what's the word, fierce, and cutting. But it's excellent.
I got the jealous God realm. I'd like to share. Laura was talking about the experience, and I was reminded of my hatred for Michael Jordan as a Knicks fan.
Great.
And yeah.
As a what?
And as a Knicks fan, New York Knicks.
Oh.
And Michael Jordan would always destroy the Knicks, where the Knicks would have this amazing team and they would have won the finals if Michael Jordan didn't eliminate them. And I remember watching the new ESPN documentary about Michael Jordan, and he talks about what motivates him. And he's such a jealous God. He talks about like a high school coach that slighted him, and he's like, I am going to ruin this guy's life. Like, he goes out of his way to annihilate this person. And like, I saw a lot of myself in that. I'm like, no wonder why I hate this guy. I'm like, I'm carrying something that I don't want to look at within myself, seeing that like ignorance and just the power and simplicity of waking up. I had a night where I couldn't get to sleep. Like, one of my kids woke up and I was just angry and insatiable for rest. Mm-hmm. And I was tossing in bed and I saw myself asleep and I wouldn't open my eyes. And I said something like, Chogyam Trungpa. And I opened my eyes and like the whole situation changed like Inception.
Wow.
And I was like asleep still.
Wow. Thank you. Those are all great examples. Yeah.
Sure. My pleasure.
Yeah. Jealous God, envy of the gods. If you see the Wheel of Life, the gods are in this one area at the top of the wheel, and the jealous gods are right to the right. And there's a tree growing in the jealous God realm. It's a fruit tree, and its boughs are hanging over the wall into the God realm, and that's where the fruit is dropping. And it really pisses off the jealous gods. Their tree is, dropping its fruit in the realm of the gods. It's funny. These realms are so powerful. I remember having a friend in college, and we all knew that whenever he sort of approached, there was this neediness, a desire for being included, and a feeling like he wasn't going to be included, and a kind of sucking up, And I always think of him when I think of Hungry Ghost, that person. With some sense.
So do you guys want to play my What's My Realm game?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So this is how it goes. I'll give a description, and then you can raise your electronic hand if you want. Or if you don't actually want to say how you think what realm it is, you could just put it in chat. Mm-hmm. Okay, so here's my first one. No longer able to tolerate disruption in your routine, you go back to, quote, normal behavior, even as the COVID virus mutates into a more contagious form. Want me to say it again?
That sounds like animal.
All right, that's what I thought. Why did you think animal?
Just to habituate.
Yeah.
You know, it's like to get comfort of just a routine and a rhythm. You know, animals like I learned from my dogs, they just need a routine and they need touch. You know, they need some sort of rhythm. And they talk about like when we get out of rhythm, our circadian rhythm gets out of balance.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, during eclipses, like the sun's rhythm is blocked for a minute, or the moon's rhythm is blocked, depending if it's solar or lunar, and that's what throws us out of our rhythm, and it dysregulates us a bit.
Yeah, so just having that real emphasis on rhythm and routine, and yeah. And I'm struck by all the people who are talking about when were we going to get back to normal, right? When can we get back to our routine? Any other thoughts? Any other realms for that one? No? Okay.
Sounds animal.
Excuse me?
It sounds animal.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
Got the presidential run.
Yeah, what's an example in like political behavior? What do you, I'm thinking of one, but is anybody else? Like how would you be an animal in the political realm, animal realm?
Or an animal?
Yeah, you try to give this perception of safety. It's like, I've been around there for 40, 50 years. You know, it's like, I know what's going on. I'm safe. And, you know,
Yeah.
like we're into this situation with Congress where like, there's actually a term for it. It's called like rent-seeking behavior. You're just looking for safety.
Rent seeking, great. Yeah, so we can find our comfortable cocoon.
Judith.
I was thinking of hell realm myself.
Yeah, say more about that.
Well, just when I was thinking of hot and extreme aggression, I just feel like we're living in a time of such aggression. I thought of hell realm.
Yeah.
The political atmosphere right now, extreme hot.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
Well, the political, the God realm, right? God or jealous God
Yeah.
with the current occupant of the White House.
Yeah. You might see the current occupant of the White House as did you say God or jealous God? I mean, maybe if you're a supporter, you see him as a God. And maybe if you're not, you see him as a jealous God. I don't know. What do people
see
think?
themselves as gods.
Yes, they
Luxuriating.
seeing themselves that way. That's what I thought.
Yeah, I mean, there's some way that I think of when I think about my life, and I wouldn't say I'm normally in the God realm, but I am. You know, I live in a beautiful house. You know, I have enough money to have my groceries delivered and stay safe from COVID. So sometimes I'm thinking of I'm older. I'm treated with respect by police. You know, Mark, I saw you had your hand up.
I was trying to hide it.
I saw it.
I was just thinking for the angry ghost, for always hungry for power,
Oh, yeah.
never satisfied, more and more, never enough,
Yes. never.
always looking for more at everybody's expense except his own. Well,
Yeah.
I don't know. Anyway, that's it.
Yeah, thank you.
Big belly, small neck. Small brain. Sorry.
There are many hungry ghosts, by the way, not just the ones with the big belly and the small neck.
Okay.
There are celestial musicians who are
This is
hungry.
my hungry ghost screensaver.
Oh, great. Oh, I love it.
And they say of the hungry ghosts especially, but all of these beings, that with the ones that we don't see, that they live all around us. So like up in the corners of your room, the roof of your house here, the ceiling, there might be a colony of jealous gods or of hungry ghosts rather, who are as oblivious of you as you are of them.
Okay, guys, I'm going to give you another one here. What's my realm? I'm searching for as much information as I possibly can on the internet, trying to find the perfect N95 mask on Amazon.
Hungry ghost.
Frederick, you actually, I was going to say you can't keep answering because you're just totally getting everything right. But I had.
I'm too quick. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. Let the other kids win sometimes.
Because you have ADD, Fred.
I'm so excited about the Dharma. I can't help myself.
No, I appreciate you contributing.
Laura, this isn't Jeopardy?
This is, what game am I referring to? I'm referring to, there used to be this old program called What's My Line? And you had to guess a person's occupation. Yeah, so what's your take on that, Valerie?
Jealous God.
Yeah, why? Why would you say that?
Acting without restraint, obsessed with achieving. I got to find it.
Mm-hmm.
Any cost. Battle, intense, competitive. Got to get there before anybody else.
Finding the perfect mask, huh?
Perfect.
Perfect. Anybody else? No?
Sounds like Fred to me.
It sounded like what, Tony?
Like Fred.
Sounded like Fred.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
Repeat.
Like the.
Who's
Very
Fred?
funny.
Frederick Steinman.
Okay.
The Fred realm.
The Fred realm. Okay, I personally, what I thought what I was describing there, it was just my perception, was that it was a lighter thing than the jealous God realm or the hungry ghost, that it was more the human realm. Like, I'm searching for all the information, but I'm trying to find something. I'm driving myself crazy a little bit, but I'm just getting frustrated, versus the hungry ghost realm is more like you're desperate. If you've ever had a friend who, I'm thinking of a friend of mine who, she is so desperate to get a relationship and have a relationship, and she's charming and smart and witty, but she is constantly wanting more than her share and still not filling up. There's an incredible sadness when I look at somebody like that, where the human realm, it's more where I am most of the day.
Yeah.
It's
sounds
like a low level frustration kind of in the background, discontent.
Couldn't that also be, Laura, more like the saturation of the experience? I mean, I think about it like, just even as I have passing thoughts where it's like, I could totally have one more of those cookies. And to me, that's just like a little hungry ghost floating right through there, like, yeah, right, all right, I could,
Yes.
Yeah, nice. Thank you, Jenny.
And Laura, when you were speaking, this reminded me of what John was saying of like the human and the hungry ghost realm coexisting, and we're so unaware of it. Like when you said the flood of information, I saw like my iPhone information like stream. I'm like, there's all this useless information I really don't need about what's happening right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
How about
Very
another
visual.
one? Maybe-
Another one?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, here's an easy one, I think. Aggressively, you're not wearing a mask because you don't believe the so-called experts. You don't let COVID dominate your life.
Oh, it's the Trump realm.
Funny too, Fred. You gotta. How about
Okay.
look, Dan Epstein or anybody? Sarah
Okay.
Lucy.
Okay, here's one more realm. All right. You are the conservative commentator David Brooks on NPR. It's October 2nd. The President of the United States has just caught a possibly fatal virus. With tears in your eyes, you ask, when is October going to be over?
The Republican realm.
You're in the Republican realm. Not to be confused with the Frederick realm. Okay, oh, there's some stuff in the chat. All right. I wasn't looking at that earlier. Let's see. Oh, Frederick, you're doing it, yeah. Privately here. So does anybody have, Frederick, you want to tell us what you think?
That sounds very human.
Tell us why, yeah.
You want things to be different than what they are. You see the suffering of the world and you're like, fuck, I want to change this. Why am I so powerless?
Yeah.
You're arguing with time.
Yeah. So you want to see things differently than they are.
You're like, fuck you, time.
That sounds a little aggressive to me, which is, it's kind of how I was getting this too, that David Brooks is in the hell realm, you know? He can't, on the 2nd of October, he's going, when will this be over? There's that powerlessness and that aggression. This is just my interpretation. And the aggressiveness that you picked up on, you know?
You know, Laura, to me, it seems like there's so much crossover, you know, like a Venn diagram. You
Absolutely,
know,
yeah.
especially like with this one and the last one with the masks on Amazon, the crossover between the hungry ghost and the human realm in terms of always, like with the masks things, it's always looking for the next perfect thing that's going to make me happy, right? So you're constantly in a state of dissatisfaction, suffering, whatever you want to call it. And when's October going to be over? You're constantly looking for the next thing, you know, to be over that's going to make us happy. You know?
Yeah, Dan, I agree. That's an excellent point. I mean, basically, they all have in commonality a grasping, right? And an obsession. And what they aren't doing is the relaxing and letting go into spaciousness.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
So maybe we should close at that point. Anybody has a burning desire to say something else?
I'd just like to say thank you so much, Laura and John, so much for your talk tonight. It was really lovely and
really.
Thank you. I really love these teachings. Like, you know, it's really fun for me to share.
Yeah, you unpacked it.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Let's say the dedication of merit. Hold on, I'll put it on the screen. And then we'll gong out. Better mute everyone. All right. By this merit, may all obtain omniscience. May it defeat the enemy wrongdoing. From the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death. From the ocean of samsara, may I free all beings. By the confidence of the golden sun of the great east, may the lotus garden of the Rigden's wisdom bloom. May the dark ignorance of sentient beings be dispelled. May all beings enjoy profound, brilliant glory. Just a reminder, no class next week. If you are not on the email list and would like to be, leave your email in chat. And I think that's everything. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Laura.
Thank you, Laura, so much. It was wonderful. Thanks.
Thank you, Laura.
Thank you, everyone.
John.
Chapter 10, John, for the following week, chapter 10.
No, we're going to be, chapter 10. We'll do chapter 10.
Just 10.
I'll send them an email, but
Good
And thank you, John.
thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, John, Laura. Take care.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Take care, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
That was a great presentation.
Yeah,
Oh, thank
Laura,
you.
great job.
Oh,
I like
thank
the
you, Tony.
sleeping references.
A little biographical, as you might imagine.